You guys wanted some volatility? You got it. Big moves up and down, quantum stocks destroyed, thanks to you know what, you know who. We'll talk biotech here at 8:35 with Dr. David Nierengarten from Wedbush Securities. And you know what? Yeah, the market's down. We had a bad day yesterday, but there's stuff rallying. We're going to cover that too on pre-market prep. We are fired up and ready to go.
The volatility right now is really incredible.
Wow, look at that consolidation on the upper right chart.
You know what we've seen this earnings season? Some of these expected moves get even more violent. This is why I have switched my strategy 10 years ago. And if you're chasing, you're in trouble.
All right, good morning, traders and investors. Poof, that 25-point rally turned into a 10, 20-point loss, and now we're battling back to unchanged here. The fade market is working today. This market's moving so fast, down 5 handles at 59.50. Huh, the buck, what a little turnaround. Up 74 cents, 109.12. TLT, holy mackerel, coming back down on the lows of the move, 85.52, down 59 cents. Crude getting a pop. That's not good for inflation. USO up 65 cents, 78.82. Gold and silver both in the green. GLD up 54 cents, 54.10 or 245.10. SLV flat 27.40. Bitcoin, well, we lost 6 figures there, folks. We're down $1,300 at 95,455. Let me stop the screen share here. Let's bring on Triple D, the tweeting master out there, and Christian Fromhertz, CF. I got to think of a better name for you. Gentlemen, we got some volatility here.
We do. I mean, Joel, we'll give you some props. First of all, you couldn't have came out with the acronym on a better day. Punt. And I like punt. I think you should go back to punt. But punk, whatever you want. I mean, Palantir was down 9% yesterday. We're not going to say Joel Elconin caused that because obviously he didn't. But the momentum, the turn in Nvidia caused all the Momo stocks to go down. It was a vicious, vicious key reversal in Nvidia where the stock makes a new all-time high. Everybody's excited. Everything's looking good. And then they literally opened the stock and institutional investors just came in and selling all morning, closed on its lows of the day, bouncing a little bit here this morning, but that was your catalyst to really knock everything over in Momo. It wasn't a bad day for everything, though. We'll bring Christian's comments in here in a second. A lot of value names. The leaders to laggards, laggards to leaders theme is working super well, meaning, like I've talked about that coming in, that a lot of your leaders might actually lag, which is obviously what we saw yesterday. But a lot of those laggards quietly leading, and we talked about, stocks, that were really down on the year, even like a stock like Nucor that had a really bad December's having a pretty good January so far. So, I mean,
hey, Dennis, I got to interrupt you. For one
Yeah.
second. It was the Nvidia. And I did that real quick because I like to talk strategy here and openings. What was the opening tick there? I don't have my data window up because a lot of times we talk about like the open and, you can get run over or you can get, a good trade off. I have an open at 153.03 and then a high of 153.43. Is that the correct
Basically
open?
open at the high tech.
Yeah.
I don't have the New York Open from yesterday because the charts
it doesn't
don't.
make okay.
But if you would ask for that yesterday, I would know it because my system, my day trading system captures it. But today's data, I don't have that.
And then the second thing that I want to mention
Nvidia was 153. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
But there's two opens. What he talks about, there's a consolidated open and an open on the NASDAQ. Most of your charts grab the consolidated open, meaning the first tick at 9:30.00. The other, the official open is the NASDAQ open, which is what happened, there. And same thing with the NYSE stocks. So I think that's what Joel's asking. What was the official open? I don't have that. I know what the consolidated open was, and it was at 153 to talk about, Christian.
The other thing I want, and then Christian, I'll bring you in here, is you did have some economic data that came out that was disturbed the market as well. Of course, you had your leader, your stock tanking, but the jolts, right? came in, just like this economy's ripping, right, Christian? You saw that data. We talked about that when it came out. So that you had the Nvidia, but then you had another catalyst too. The catalyst was, holy macro, this economy is ripping. Interest rates aren't going up, and that just got the ball rolling. So, okay, Christian, 6 minutes in, let's get your take.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are circling around, what the catalyst for the day was. But yeah, I mean, by the time that economics came out, I think Nvidia was down about $5 from where it opened. So I mean, this is one of the most vicious reversal days, or rejections of an all-time high, I think ever. I saw some data out on Twitter about that, but I mean that's a very remarkable move from,
Oh
regardless
yeah.
of like the exact open. You talk about 153 to 140. So that was a story in and itself yesterday, and then compounded by a big move up in both the data points. And I stress this a lot with the ISM numbers. ISM numbers are much more important because it's a leading indicator, and it can really move the market. It's something that I kind of talk a lot about on social media and so forth. It's much more important than things like GDP, which if you took a basic economics class, GDP is a lagging indicator. ISM is on the side of a leading indicator. So that and the jolts both indicated that the economy is strong. Good news is bad news, especially when everybody is focused on right now about interest rates. Those took off, and really went up. TLT was down at about another 1% yesterday. Then in addition, you have bond auctions this week, right? So if we look at what's on the radar for today, yesterday was a 10-year bond auction. Today you get the third bond auction of the week, which is the 30-year bond auction. They're going to need to have a very strong 30-year bond auction today, considering that bonds are down once again. I'm looking at 30-year bond futures down about 0.5%, and the dollar has cranked back up. And that was the other story too yesterday. So those are headwinds. The market did not like that. You have that coupled with, which we're going to talk about in a minute, just the crazy outperformance that we've seen over the last couple of weeks of growth versus value. And then all of a sudden, you also have the January effect that's mixed in there. So you got a lot of moving parts going on, big day in terms of events and headlines yesterday. But, I think we're going to talk a little bit about the value moves, but really, at one point, I think it was like in the early afternoon, I was looking at where the indices were lining up. The Qs were down over 1%, right? And of course, those are bigger names that are going to be in the S&P. But when you look at the equally weighted S&P yesterday, something that's really been lagging, it was actually positive. It was actually up about 10, 20 basis points. Now, it kind of succumbs to the volatility that we saw at the end of the day, but it just tells you, to Dennis's point, that it wasn't all stocks that were down yesterday.
Mm-mm.
It was actually a lot of different groups that people have kind of, been ignoring a little bit, but January effect also kind of kicked in, and you started to really see things like healthcare kind of perk up. There's a headline yesterday too about the first bird flu death. So you started to see things like Moderna, NVAX. So again, that's a mouthful. We'll talk about some of these areas, but
Whew.
very
Yeah.
interesting day yesterday.
Okay.
Also, so just going through the major headline of why, a lot of tech stocks are down here overnight. The quantum rally imploded here. So we had Jensen Huang was speaking obviously the night before, but he also was speaking yesterday. And after 4 o'clock, he talked about quantum computing. And his commentary was that don't expect a quantum computer for at least 15 years. And then he looked at the CFO and added, well, it's probably 30 years away. So all these quantum stocks that are up 500, 1,000%, literally in the last month and a half,
Wow.
are having a really rough morning here. So IONQ, QUBT, QBTS, QMCO. When that headline came out, I tweeted out to try to warn everyone. I said, don't be early on this dip. My tweet actually, all these quantum stocks are 500 to 1,000% in a few months. Don't be early on the dip, meaning just because you see $1 or $2 dip on your favorite quantum stock doesn't mean, that they're, done dipping here, because there's a lot of fluff in all of these names. I mean, just giving perspective, QMCO, a $2 stock in the middle of November. 2 months later, it hit 90. I mean, these are
Oh
bubbles,
my! I
folks.
did not see this one.
These are bubbles, folks. Bubbles burst and they end in tears. That's what you're seeing happen right now, everybody who is chasing. I mean, if you're in from 2, you're still pretty happy the stock's 35. But you got to watch chasing in this environment. And there is bubbles bursting all over the place in the last couple of days. And again, Nvidia to a certain extent started that with the big key reversal. But, obviously then Nvidia comments, Jensen Huang, really started the correction in the quantum stocks. Now, does that mean it's over? The quantum rally is over? Well, nothing just ends just like that. There's always snapbacks, there's always rallies. But I mean, when you get the biggest technology leader of our world talking about saying, quantum computing and quantum computers are 15 to 30 years away, that's going to take a hit no matter what. So those are your names. The quantum stock's really, really having a rough morning.
Well, I just wanted to mention too, because when you tweeted that out, like I wasn't in front of my computer when you tweeted that out, so that was great information. And if you, Joel, if you could bring up the chart of, we could do a little trade school here, but look at the chart of QUBT. So I was looking at this chart at the end of the day yesterday, even before the news came out, and I said, this thing, if you look at the top right chart of the daily chart, and I looked at this, I was like, this thing's going to break one way or another. And after the what we saw yesterday, I was like, normally if it's a good tape, right, and a strong tape, I would be looking at this possibly from the long side, because it's really the consolidation is very, very tight here. So when you tweeted that news out, which was great, and really kind of gave your followers a good heads up at the story, I got back in front of the computer and I was like, okay, I started to see RGTI move down, IONQ and so forth. But I was like, okay, this QUBT is down about $1. And I said, the way that pattern looks like, I think that this is going to really start to move to the downside. I went out and I shorted QUBT.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And it's still going down. So I think that this thing could go down to about 1260. I got out of my short this morning. I covered at, what was the price that I covered? Right around 1380. So,
Great trade, Christian.
So, well, Gray mentioned, and that's, a very symbolic of like, hey, there's a news story out, and this is something that these names have driven up a lot, because for a while sometimes you can be very early. I forget what short seller, I forget the guy's name, you guys probably know him, but he was out tweeting like about 2 weeks ago saying that QUBT is a short, but it wasn't the right time. There wasn't a
It's
catalyst.
so hard. It's so, because you
Yeah.
could get so annihilated in this kind of thing. And that's, look at that, look at that move up. I'm just throwing just a minor technical out here, because this is absolute no man's land. But if you go from that low at like $1 and you go to that high, halfway back is around $14. So I'm just looking at that technically. But do you like going for the lower price stocks? I mean, do you find there's more liquidity in them? Because I guess they're all not that high of a
This
price.
isn't about being a lower price stock. It's about just being a storied stock that has just so much liquidity, Joel. All of these things. I mean, this QUBT's traded 3 million shares already this morning. You want to get in and out of this thing, it's like water. It's so liquid. So, I mean, I think that's what Christian's attracted to myself as well. I mean, I don't trade the stuff because it's wild and I'm a little more conservative, but I always want to trade stuff that's liquid. And, this stuff is just super liquid right now. So you can get in
I'm out of
it
it. Like,
easily.
I'm happy to take the gain and I'm probably leaving some on the table, but to your point, these things are so volatile. And I think it's really important to kind of understand how the volatility has changed in these. Just looking at, like, I look at average true range. And if you look at the average true range expand in these things, it's been, and then you divide, I use the average true range to give a sense of volatility. So if you watch the average true range increase and then you divide that by the stock price, you'll get a sense of how much the stock is moving in a given day. And I don't have that up in front of me, but I think at some point, like, these things were moving about like 15% a day. So it is like a day trader's paradise when you see the average true range increase by that.
I'm points in the chat, like people talking about IBM holding up well, other names holding up well. It's what we started the show with. Value names are really holding up quite well here. So just keep that in mind. Again, when you get a calendar turn, and we talked about this 2 weeks going in, 3 weeks, a month going into it, talking about the potential for a January effect. You are absolutely seeing it happen here 8 days into the year, where the growth, the storied stocks, the excitement has some profit taking in it because everybody's sitting on some big profits. And then you have the value names that are beat up, that had tax loss selling happening to them. A lot of them, pulling back. IBM is probably not the best example, but it is a value name. But, like just going to that list, of your biggest losers for the year. I mean, Walgreens was on the top of it. It was having a great morning there yesterday. And then obviously in the afternoon, everything just started selling off. But I mean, at one point in time, Walgreens was up 50 cents for a $9 stock. That's a pretty big move here.
Just
but,
real quick, I don't
yep.
I don't want to interrupt you, but
no, interrupt us if we want. That's what we do on the show. We interrupt each other.
ADP numbers came out. Private payroll rises 122 versus 140, so it's a little bit light. Keep in mind that we've got the real number, the big number on Friday, which is the jobs number.
And also keep in mind the market's not open tomorrow. So,
Closed.
if you're taking, I guess the futures are going to be. When I was on Stocks and Jocks yesterday, I think the futures markets are going to be. So that should be interesting. You did get that. What else you do? You got today? Yeah, you got Fed Waller speaking at 8:30. And then don't forget, guys, at 2 p.m. you have the Fed minutes, FOMC. So, well, sometimes that's a mover, sometimes it's
for
not.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, and analysts are still coming out. There's a million upgrades down today, a million downgrades today.
Before we do that, Dennis, can you give me some more winners? Give me more winners. Let's stick
winners
with the
for
winners.
the year. Well,
Well,
Moderna. We talked about Moderna, and Moderna is one great example. Laggard the entire year, closed the year not even far from the lows. We closed the year $41. It's 47 now. You're talking about stocks up 15% in a matter of 5 January trading days. It was right on the top of the loser board for the S&P. So it's another example here. I mean, there's just so many examples. Let me just go to a few other ones.
Moderna, I just want to throw in, and believe me, I'm not, I'm just mentioning it because I've seen the news, but bird flu talk, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. But I'm just saying.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt. But let's keep going.
We talked Boeing.
If you would have said too.
We haven't talked Boeing. Sorry.
Boeing's trying. I was just going to chime in one quick sec. If you would have said that the Qs were down 1.8%, and if you would have said, where do you think solar stocks are for the day? I just reiterating your point that it's a lot of January effect. Solar stocks, the solar ETF was up 3% yesterday.
Yep.
So again, gives you a sense of, just to your point about the underperformers. The solar stocks were the worst ETF, like sector or group ETF last year. So that group that group has been up every day this year. Solar stocks, I just want to give you the data, sorry, but very quickly. So if I go 12/31 of 2024, solar stocks are up 10.5% this year. Every day has been green this year for the solar ETF.
And that is just classic January effect. Everybody hated solar in 2024. One of the worst sectors really for the last 3 or 4 years. Does that mean it's the turnaround story? Does that mean, all these stocks are going back to their highs? No, absolutely not. The January effect often doesn't last more than a couple of weeks. So when you get a 10%, and think about the F in my fade trade. Think about the F. When you get 10% moves in 4 days, it's probably prudent, in a tape that we've had like this, it's probably prudent to take some money off the table. Some people asking, what's fade mean? They don't know what it means newer to trading. Okay, so fading is just basically when you get a move in either direction, you're being a contrarian, meaning you're selling into rips and you're buying into dips. That's all it is. And I think 2025 is going to be a lot of like, oh my gosh, we're going to the moon. Oh no, it's a disaster. We got to sell everything. Oh my gosh, we're going to the moon. Oh no, it's a disaster. We got to sell everything. I think it's going to be sideways chop. And that's why it's going to be a fantastic day trading environment. It's going to be a fantastic trading environment. I don't think it's going to be a fantastic investing environment. And Joel's punt acronym, obviously. And maybe we're wrong. Again, we don't have a crystal ball.
I don't
know.
Things it's just how change. I feel. I just feel.
Me too.
That there's factors out there, and sometimes feel can get you run over, and there's tire tracks all over your back. But I just, the bonds, yeah, we've rallied and the bonds have gone down. There's a lot of uncertainty right now. And we're not even going into the tariff talk or the potential geopolitical, situation that's out there. But it's just like, and that's kind of like when I was going through it. And I know you guys did bullish ones and I know what the market did, but it was like, I'm not nervous. I don't think, we're going into like a spiral like we did in 2020,
Yeah.
but I see the absence of catalyst, positive catalyst. Now, Q1 earnings or Q4 earnings season coming, everything's rosy. That's one thing. But it's just feel. And like I said, sometimes feel can not be great. I just want to give a shout out to the Brentster who's going to be coming on at 9 o'clock today. He's been sending out a daily recap. I'm going to put the link in there. Sign up. He goes over the show, talks about some of the highlights of it. And I know a lot of people, I got a lot of responses. Some people listen in their car and they can't write things down. So I'm going to put the
A lot
link
of the
in
stuff's
there.
written down for you in this. So yeah,
Yep.
Brentster, thanks so much. Just to clarify, Joel, I am not bullish for 2025. I know, like I put stocks in there because everybody wanted stocks, so I gave you 3 stocks. I originally my acronym I had written down was cash, like just staying,
Oh,
very
I thought about
conservative.
that. I thought about that
I had,
too.
but I couldn't come up with the letters for it. So, like with the stocks for it. So that's why I went with I
That's
went with fade.
interesting.
But fade is again, fade when you're fading, it's more a sideways action. You're thinking long-term sideways. So I think, we've got, Joel obviously very bearish, on the year. I can respect that opinion because part of me is very bearish as well. I can also respect a bullish opinion, but I think it's going to be more like this. So I'm calling for sideways. I wouldn't be surprised the S&P ends the year at the same price it is right now. We have a lot of chop in between. Again, no crystal ball, probably not going to happen. But I mean, sideways action. So I think, what are contrarian strategies? Just talk about them for a second. Obviously, selling the dip or selling the rip, buying the dip, not selling the dip. That would be momentum. But covered calls. I mean, maybe if you got a whole bunch of
Yep,
stocks, maybe you're
yep.
bringing in more income. Maybe if you think you're not getting called away or the stock market's not crashing, you just bring in premium, load it in a little bit more. So, I mean, there's so many good contrarian strategies, and people have thrown those away because we've been in a Momo market for 2 years. But, it's again about adjusting. I've been in this market for 25 years. What works today often doesn't work tomorrow. That's why you have to have a whole toolbox of strategies, a bunch of strategies for different market environments. We're trying to call the market environment. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, so it could be wrong. But I do think even with yesterday's action gives me more, feel that, hey, I might be right with this very choppy 2025 call.
And I just want to say, you got a fantastic shirt on. I'm wearing my Michigan shirt too. I know you guys hate sports, but man, Michigan whooped up on UCLA at UCLA last night. So had to get the little sports thing in there. I got my Michigan shirt on. I wear my Michigan stuff at the gym. But okay, are we done with the positive stuff? Oh no, let's talk steel. We talked about a lot of steel yesterday, and SCCO had a decent move. So
Well, that's
um,
copper, but we're talking
copper,
NUE. I mean,
yeah.
metals, if you want to talk metals, obviously it's showing some life. US Steel showing a little bit of life, but again, Cleveland Cliffs CEO is on and he sounds like he wants to buy this thing lower. I don't think Cleveland Cliffs come paying $35 for the stock. That's why I'm not a huge fan of US Steel, up at 33. I think, I'd be a fan at 25. But, obviously we have a president coming in that's, could potentially help, not saying US Steel because he's not going to vote for that merger. So I don't think 50 is on the table, but could he help the metals? Maybe. There's a lot of, this administration's it's going to be very interesting. One thing is certain that it's going to be fun to kind of watch what happens. There's not going to be any like boredom here with this administration. It's going to be a lot of headlines, a lot like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're saying that. Like the Canada 51st state, which, started as a joke, and he's tweeting more and more and more about it. I'm like, are we getting invaded? I mean, this is, obviously not going to happen, but I mean, this is just, where this administration is at. I mean, there is going to be some wild political moves here in this market.
Great point by Jay here, long-time listener to the show. He's worried about inflation. The
For
biggest problem with
sure.
yeah, yeah. And Powell indicated that. I mean, there's no doubt about it that that 2% is sticky, is something Blue talked about. We'll be getting some inflation numbers, I believe, next week. So that'll be important, very important thing to keep an eye on for next year or for this year. Okay, are we done with the positive stocks? Anything else? You mentioned the steel. You mentioned healthcare. Christian, what
I'm
else? You mentioned something else that was perking up.
I'm looking at well, energy has been on a tear this year.
There you go. That was it. Yep.
So that's what I think the XLE ETF. Looking at the performance this year, it's up about 3% for the year. But you've got a lot of names that have been acting pretty well in the space. Again, a lot of these trades that have been really beaten up. To Dennis's point, that like I wouldn't be buying solar. If you've got the strong move in something like solar, like I would take it at this point. Energy, I think it's got off to a really good start. Unfortunately, like I hate to say it because energy was not a big performer, but I'm in a couple things like what's YPF is a name that I'm in. That's
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
momentum name. I would
Wow.
maybe let them cool like the bigger names. Like I know like I bought Exxon calls a little bit early. Again, your timing has to be really right with these things. But I finally got my first target like in some Exxon calls, but that hasn't been one of the strongest performers in there. But yeah, I mean, there's little things like that. AR is mentioned in the chat. Like that's another one I looked at. I did not pull the trigger, but that's been really really a nice performer. YPF is a Argentina nat gas name, and the Argentina theme has been very very strong. Just answering questions from the chat, but yeah, I like the AR, and I like what's the other name? The other nat gas name, EQT, is another name that I like too in the energy space.
So, analysts, holy mackerel, just so many calls here. We usually start with the upgrade, so we will do that again. Carvana, back-to-back upgrades
Oh,
here. CVNA gets another upgrade, so nobody likes the Hindenburg report. They're all fading it, meaning they're buying into the weakness. CVNA upgraded by Citigroup, strengthening retail unit sales is what they say. So, quick commentary on Carvana as it gets the pop yesterday, a little bit of drop with the overall market, but right back up here again, thanks to Citigroup.
pretty wide open here. For me, I'm just gonna give an area. Boom, boom, boom. What do you have next? I'm gonna call it 212. I mean, that's still $9 away, but there's an area, three highs there. 70,000 shares. I say just hold the open. They get what was yesterday's high? Well, you're not even at yesterday's high yet, folks. So, I mean, of course, the market tanked, but first things first, if they're going to run with this today and they really like, who was it from, Dennis? Was it someone
Citi.
pretty influential?
Citi.
City?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're big.
Yeah. I mean, there's some people that, bought the dip the previous 2 days and they're like, oh, I really wanted to sell this in the 200 handles. So see if you see any in Carvana. In Hindenburg, haven't they been pretty good on their shorts?
Well, they had the one big hit, and that's why, with SMCI. So that's what's really given them a lot of credibility. I mean, they've been pretty good all around with it. They've done a pretty damn good job of picking weak companies, or picking the stories that are going to turn weak. So they have probably the most credibility out of any of them on the street. I mean, we still know the strategy. Like they load up a short, they put out a story. I don't know when they cover. They don't disclose that. Maybe they don't cover for a long time. Maybe they cover sooner than they should. We don't know that, but I mean, you got to give them credit because they've been right on some of these names that they've been calling out weakness. This one here, though, we have two analysts saying that they're wrong. I also like just this Accenture upgrade from Wolf. So we talked Accenture yesterday. Gets the big
Ooh.
pop, then obviously pulls back with the Nvidia pullback yesterday, but didn't close down. I think it closed just slightly green. Wolf comes out and uses that as a buying opportunity. So they upgraded here this morning. Again, seeing that, presentation with Nvidia, looks like Accenture is going to be a big part, obviously, when they get their own, slides and presentation here. I think it's forgotten. So I'm kind of interested in Accenture here in the 350 to 355 area.
Yeah, good support. Broke out. I think we gave this level yesterday, and it gave you a breakout above it.
It did, and then Nvidia
Yeah.
gave you the pullback. The
Oh, that's
question
it.
is, I think you've got to watch Nvidia. So I mean, you could come and make a buy and obviously Accenture here on the Wolf upgrade. But if Nvidia continues to roll over, Accenture is going to roll over too. So Nvidia is driving the bus here. So you got to be somewhat careful. So if you are buying this, I'd keep one eye on Nvidia.
Okay. All right. We had some
other
economic
ratings that caught my eye. If any of you have caught your eye too, I'm just cherry picking a few that caught my eye here. If anything else caught your guys' eye, let me know. Twilio is a retail name that's very loved. Mizuho's upgrading them to outperform here this morning. They are up $3. Obviously, they pulled back with the overall market. I mean, this one feels late to the party, this upgrade here, because this stock was $60 back in September, basically almost doubled in 3 months. And now, this is one that could be prone to this profit taking we were talking about, also prone to, potentially just, like some relative weakness. Leaders to laggards, laggards to leaders. Twilio is definitely a late year leader. So, I mean, I'm a little bit scared of this one a little bit more than the Accenture.
If you want this one to keep going, you got to get to yesterday's high, 1373. And then you might get a look at 115, your 2-day high, and then actually the high of the move. S&P's bouncer. Dennis, your fade. It worked. It's worked already like 4 times today.
Just chop, man. Chop.
Look at this coming back, roaring back, 6 1/4 handles now. We are now 35 handles off the low of the session. Christian, any analyst moves gotta catch your eye before we bring on our Wedbush analyst, Dr. David Nierengarten, and he's going to talk. You want to talk about beating down sectors? Well, we're going to talk biotechs here just in a minute. But Christian, any analyst ratings are catching your attention?
Well, there's a news story that just hit the tape. Meta floats eBay ads to fix to comply EU antitrust order. So that's moving eBay in the market.
Big pop in eBay.
Yeah, that's one. Obviously not an analyst.
That's a big pop. Yeah, that's huge.
eBay's a value name, remember, too. We're in a value market here, at least so far in the first few days of January. So just be careful. People are saying you fade in this move, fade in this move. I mean, overall, maybe. But you know what the PE is on eBay?
9.
Well, it's a little higher than that. Forward PE is 12. I mean,
okay.
It's a cheap stock. So, this is a value name. It's a stock that really didn't outperform in 2024. Actually did do pretty good in 2024, but, this is still a value name. Lower PE stocks are doing better right now, so just somewhat cautious. And when you're fading moves, I always say, and again, I can see, the resistance you're running into at 68, so I can respect that as well. And if you want to try it off the 68, maybe you can. But, I mean, I hate randomly shorting when they're going straight up. I'm more about, kicking them when they're down. They start to roll over. That's when you strike. Just like, Christian's, short on which short was a QBTS? Which one did you do yesterday? Which quantum stock did you pick on?
QUBT.
QUBT. I mean, Christian was kicking them when they're down. Starts going down. It's got a headline. He's coming, kind of jumping in there, shorting the breakdown. Obviously off of a major headline there. So I mean, I like those setups better than just saying, okay, well, this is good news, but we're fading everything. Just randomly shorting stocks that are making new highs sometimes is not the way to do it. Maybe wait for a little bit of weakness and then try it.
Dennis, I know you're going to get mad at me, but we're just whipping around here.
They don't know what to do with this market. The algos don't know what the algos are programmed. There's so many momentum programmed algos here right now. They're kind of lost in this market right now, and they're getting chopped up themselves.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about putting orders out, and it's like bouncing around like a.
That's a great way to do it. Have your orders sitting there, and you get down and you get done, and it gets up and you get done. Having your orders out there in a choppy market is always a good idea.
Okay, it is 8:35, and as promised, I'm going to bring on Dr. David Nierengarten. Doctor from Wedbush Securities, and we're going to talk some biotech stocks. Dr. David Nierengarten over at Wedbush Securities, covering a fun sector. David, good start to the year for you?
Oh, I think it's as expected, a little bit of a bounce in biotech as we head into another bank's conference in San Francisco that everyone attends from the biotech industry. I think people are, again, there's a little bit of excitement out there. We saw IPO filing today. I think there's some good feelings.
Sum
out
up
there.
2024 for us. I mean,
Yeah.
it looked like, oh baby, we're going to the moon. Look at, we're breaking out, and then kaplooey. So sum up the catalyst for 2024.
Yeah, people got really excited, I think, with the idea that there would be, 5 or 6 rate cuts and everything was going up, cost of capital going down, and biotech's a capital intensive industry. So, I think that fueled the spring move. And then when it became apparent that wasn't going to happen, people took their money and ran. And, we ended up with, I think by the end of the year, we're, depending on exactly where you benchmark it, we're kind of flattish, depending. In biotech, if it's less than a 30% move, why wake up? So it was less than that by the end of the year. So.
Okay, well, let's move on to some issues that you wanted to cover today. And let me get the screen up here. Let me get the chart, and we got a few individual issues that you have an eye on here. Boy, you want to pronounce the name, or do you want me to?
Anaptys. Yep, Anaptys. It's like my name. It's not as bad as it looks.
Okay. All right. Talk about this stock here, and I guess if you're in a buy the dip mode, this is a candidate.
Yeah, I like it here. So what happened back in late last year is one of their candidates failed, admittedly in the clinical trial. It was against a new target, and atopic dermatitis, which is eczema, it's a skin condition. And yeah, it didn't work. Stock got hit. It's not the main driver of the stock, in my opinion. The main pipeline value is their compound that we're going to see, or the drug candidate we're going to see phase 2 data for in February. And so, it was a nice clearing event, in my opinion. Got the price lower for investors to get ahead of this rheumatoid arthritis readout in February of this year. We think it's going to work there. There's some questions, there's some controversy about that, which is why it's trading where it is. But we think it's a good drug candidate, and will have efficacy in the rheumatoid arthritis. They also have an ulcerative colitis study ongoing, but that won't read out till next year. So February is the main event for these guys.
And how they doing with cash?
So they're trading pretty close to cash at these levels. Actually, they have a pretty large cash balance. I think it's around 400 million. Their last quarter. So, yep, they don't need money.
Got some. So, with these stocks, and I'm not very active in the biotechs. I know that there's competitors, and there's a stock can move. So, what would be bad news for this stock? From another company, or good news? I can't pronounce these what it is, but who do you keep an eye on when you're watching ANAP?
Yeah, so Lilly is one of them. Gilead's another one. So Lilly had a similar program that they said they would not continue development, and that hit the stock middle of last year because the Anaptys drug is in the same class. However, we believe, and based on preclinical data and everything like that Anaptys is a better candidate, a better molecule in this class, and will show better efficacy than Lilly. And to the full background, Lilly's drug did show efficacy. They just said it wasn't, a competitive enough efficacy profile for Lilly. So the class works. It's just Lilly's drug wasn't competitive enough. We think Anaptys' drug will be.
All right, sticking with the A's, Apogee, Apogee Therapeutics, Inc. That's a little bit. I don't know why everyone got so excited there in November about it. Maybe the catalyst, and they turned on it and pounded it down to 42. So for me, I'm always looking at a bounce back to the 52, 53 area. Tell us about Apogee Therapeutics.
Yeah, so they're looking at making really drugs against known targets and making them better. So less frequent dosing, less, just potentially better efficacy. So they've had a couple of data events in the last year that showed what they were doing is working. So basically, they had admittedly healthy people, healthy volunteers, but showing that their drugs that are in these classes for atopic dermatitis, for asthma, have much less frequent dosing potential in patients. And what we're going to see this year is initial efficacy data for one of their drugs that's like Dupixent, which is a 12 plus $13 billion plus drug in asthma in the first half of the year. And the big event for them is actually patient data for their atopic dermatitis drug, 777. That's going to be the biggest driver for the shares, and that's coming around mid-year. So we'll see some asthma data probably before the atopic dermatitis data, but the dermatitis data is going to be the big deal in the middle of the year. And again, your competitor out there is a $13 billion drug. It's a good drug, but it's dosed every 2 weeks. They're looking at dosing, once every 3, probably once every 6 months. So a lot more convenient for patients.
Okay, sticking with the early part of the alphabet here.
I don't know the alphabet past C, so
Yeah. Is this a Kathy stock or not? Beam Therapeutics? No, I don't think so. I don't know where I came up.
Actually, they've held it in the past. I don't know if they hold it right now.
Okay. What do you like about this stock?
What I like about this stock is we're going to get first in human data, and stocks like this. So this is a genetic gene medicine, genetic editing stock. What we've seen repeatedly in the past is when these stocks show first in human data, they rip. And so what Beam is going to have is their first in human data in the first half of this year for Beam 302, which is correcting a genetic defect in patients who have this disease called AATD. But it's basically a disease that affects your liver and lung, causes, of course, function to decline and things like that. But they're looking really to cure that disease with one infusion of a genetic medicine, and where we should get the first couple of patient cohorts of data first half of this year. And like I said in the past, these stocks have ripped on first in human data.
Hey, David, thanks for being on the show again. And so this is nice. I like when there's these catalysts for some of these names. Just bigger overall question for you too. Do you think that this year is, we've already seen one acquisition that happened, and that was more in the medical device space with the Scenari Medical. Do you think that this is a year, considering like these three names are more, I guess, Beam is a little bit larger, but they're on the smaller cap space. Do you think that this is a good year for M&A activity in the biotech space?
So I'm going to caveat this and say M&A activity always disappoints. I've never heard an investor happy with the M&A activity for a year. But what I will say, I think what's going to happen this year is we'll get a few more acquisitions of later stage companies, given the unlikely scrutiny of the new FTC, for M&A. So this could be the year we finally see, a bigger acquisition like off of my list in Argenx, which is a 40 billion market cap company. But it definitely, potentially has overlap with other potential acquirers. But hey, if we're not talking about the FTC anymore, that could go, so you could see some of these larger acquisitions in the biotech world, in my opinion, later stage, larger companies.
And then just one follow-up question for you too. So this space, is your view like overall, like, I sometimes will just trade the ETFs in the space, like XBI versus IBB.
Yep.
Do you think that this is more of a favorable year for the smaller cap bios or larger cap?
I think it's probably, so I cover small mid cap, so I'm more familiar with that. But I do think the tailwinds are better this year for small mid caps because they tend, after the last couple of years, they've actually rebuilt their cash balances. So the median cash balance, I believe now, is like 2+ years of runway for these companies. And so, I think that's one tailwind. I think, that we could see again potentially a bit more acquisitions. So, if there's any, rate relief and things like that, I do think small mid caps would outperform.
Okay. Is there any stocks you're negative on?
I'm neutral on a couple names. One is Intellia. So speaking of genetic medicines, NTLA is the ticker. These guys, I'm just not very enthusiastic about the indications they've picked for their genetic, editing medicines and potential cures. They have a lot of competition, and the competition is pretty good. So their lead competition is a rare disease called ATTR. Alnylam has several drugs in that space that are likely to be dosed as infrequently as maybe once every 6 months. So the one and done attraction, drops dramatically when you're talking about, hey, you just get a quick shot in the doctor's office, which you need to check up anyway, once every 6 months if you have this disease at least. They have another drug candidate in HAE. Again, there's a lot of medicines out there for HAE, including prophylaxis that prevents the attacks that are the troublesome. They're like a massive allergic, response. And those attacks, though, are well prevented now with prophylactic treatment and on-demand treatment if you feel it coming on. And so I think these guys have a tough competitive landscape ahead of them for their genetic medicines.
All right. We've been on the line with Dr. David Nierengarten. He's an analyst over there at Wedbush Securities covering the biotechs and gave us some things to look at. David, thank you very much, and we'll have you on again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Thanks,
All
David.
right. All right. Here we are back to the markets, just dancing around unchanged there. Triple D, what's catching your eye? Someone says Tesla's leaking. That
It's
rough day
actually rallying right now. It was lower earlier. It's coming back a little bit. This market is all chop, Joel. I mean,
beyond
we've
chop.
hit this is like ridiculous chop. Like we're 5-7 point S&P ranges that are going like this. So we are really moving around. They're really trying to figure out. The algos are really trying to figure it out. But there's always stories, to talk about here. I think we should cover the downgrades. The biggest downgrade of the day is a stock that I'm getting hit on here this morning. It's AMD. Wasn't going to dodge it here. HSBC coming out. I think they're late to the party here. They had a $200 price target on it. So here's HSBC. They got a $200 price target on this thing, and they had a buy rating on it. They double downgraded to reduce, and they lower the price target to 110. So they literally missed 75 points of it, like on the fall, from 200 down to 125. And now you downgrade to reduce when you're literally at 125 and you're saying you can go down to 110. I mean, again, they're hitting this pretty hard here, but this is a Johnny come lately downgrade here. They probably used yesterday's strength to a certain extent, or the day before's strength, the strength the last couple of days to say, okay, we're going to, get this out. And, obviously we had a bad call, but to go from buy to reduce here, I mean, nobody's been more wrong than this analyst.
I love the setup if you're bullish here. I like a little move here, a little bit of a rally, right? You come off the low of the move right around 118, you kiss 131, halfway back. I mean, if you're in the the triple D camp on this one, you didn't chase it and get stuffed over 130. Not just today and whatever the market does, but if you start to build a little bit of a base here, that means that everyone that was trying to buy that under 120 is now upping their area to 125. So I like the setup there. AMD, if you're looking to get the long, you feel like you missed out on it. And
I think
Christian,
the main point here too, which is a good point you're making, Joel, is that it's not the chasing environment. We're just not in an environment like, oh my gosh, I missed it, I better pay up. I think, does it get another shot at 120? We're in the kind of environment that probably says yes. So I bought some at 120. I don't know what I paid last week, 122 or something, somewhere in there. I'm slowly building a position here in AMD. I think, I again, if we have this sideways year, it's highly unlikely that AMD is going to be up 100% this year. Do I think there's a potential for, a turnaround here, where this stock actually has been really hit? It's down 100 points from the high. The PE is 27. Yeah, I still think the story is intact. Even this analyst rating, when you read into it, they're looking and they're saying, well, they're pushing out, their new chips to 2020, end of 2025, 2026. They're basically saying this next year, maybe, it's just, a timing issue. But I think if you're sticking AMD in your long-term portfolio here, I think you're going to be happy it did it.
I have a question for you, Dennis, on this.
Yeah.
So, it's one of the things that so when I was listening to Jensen speak the other night, and like I said, I still say the same thing as I said yesterday. I really kind of need to do a little bit of research and get my head around all the different things that he's rolling out. Do you so I thought about the competitors in terms of an AMD as a competitor.
For sure.
What would be so when you hear that, when he's coming out with all these different AI different ways to basically get involved in AI and so forth, does this make you take a step back on AMD to be like, geez, how are they going to compete with an Nvidia after all of these things? And I like Lisa Su. I think she's a very good CEO. But the question is, do they have too far to make up ground to be relevant in that space? So is that something that you're considering?
I don't think that it's like, can they get a piece of the market share on AI? Because right now it's all Nvidia. It's all Nvidia. The pie is big, but I mean, when you look at a market cap situation here, and again, this is a bet on Lisa Su, folks. This is not a bet. But when you look at the market cap situation, AMD is $200 billion market cap company. I mean, they've done a lot of things right in the last, 10 years. There's no doubt Lisa Su's done a lot of things right. So betting on Lisa Su over the last 10 years has been a good bet. I mean, Nvidia is sitting here at, $3.5 trillion market cap. So you're talking about a company that is, almost 10 times the size of AMD. Can AMD come in and get a piece of the action? I think the bet here is that AI is for real. One, you're not buying AMD. If you think AI is a bubble, you're not buying AMD. But if you think AI is real, then you can make a case for buying AI type stocks. I think there's a place where AMD could be the clear number 2. I think there is. I think, it's obviously, we've got, other competitors coming into the space as well. But I think there's a case where AMD could be the clear number 2. Do I think they're eventually going to beat out Nvidia? No, I do not. But I also, Nvidia trades almost 10 times the market cap. So I'm basically making a bet on Lisa Su. And you know what? It could prove to be wrong. And maybe Nvidia just has too much of a lead. Maybe Nvidia just has too much of a lead, and there's not going to be that chance for AMD to ever catch up. That's a possibility too. Maybe they pull an Intel. Maybe AMD goes back to Intel, and that's it. But again, just making bets. And again, remember, folks, and I'll let you finish your point in a second there, Christian. I know I kind of run on sentence here, but remember, this is why you stay diversified as well. Because even when you make bets, you're never going to be right all the time. Yes, the Tesla bet was good for me. Yes, I had a pretty damn good year in 2024 and a good year in 2023. I mean, I've been right about a lot of things, but I've also been wrong about some things too. So, I mean, again, stay diversified. I don't take all my money and put in AMD, but do I put 2% of my money in AMD? Maybe 3% if I get convicted? Yes. What were you going to say, Christian?
I like the thought that you're betting on the CEO a bit. I mean, she's a great leader, great CEO, and there's something to be said for sticking with those strong leadership in companies is much better than going after a company that's just down and it's got weak leadership. There is a very strong fundamental view there. So thank you for.
I just like the way she's turned. AMD was basically almost bankrupt when Lisa Su came in. I mean, they were burning cash. It was just a mess. And look at what the stock performance has done. It's arguably been one of the best stock performers of the last decade. When we came from $2, the gutter of AMD, it's over the story, to becoming, bigger than Intel, better than Intel was impressive in itself. So have they had some missteps here with AI? Is Nvidia ahead of them? Absolutely. Do I think Lisa Su is watching that CEO? Do I think she's watching that conference? I think she's sitting there and taking notes. I think she's sitting there and figuring stuff out. Where are they going? How can we do it? Lisa Su's smart. There's a bet on Lisa Su. That's all this is, a bet on Lisa Su.
All right, Dennis, just a general market comment here too, folks, is keep an eye on unchanged in your stocks if it's anything like the S&P today, because after all the ups and downs and everything, we're just, a lot. If you're looking for your stock just to have a good day, despite the, the circumstances, you're not probably won't see unchanged in some of your quantum stocks, but I'm looking at Nvidia, the up a $1.67. If that comes back to unchanged, I'd look at that as support. And then conversely, if you're looking, if you're stuck on something, comes back up to the mark. Look at that. I think today, as opposed to the highs and lows from yesterday, I think the mark is going to be real important in today's session. So we do have the Brentster in the background here, Dennis. We
Yeah,
were going to bring him on and
let's bring him on right now.
okay. All right. He's not a guest. He doesn't get a guest intro because he's the Brentster. Hey, good morning, Brent.
Good morning, pre-market prep.
You are
Okay.
always styling too. Brent has always been styling the entire time. I think I met you, Brent, probably back about 2012 or 2013 when we first started at Benzinga. And just if you don't know Brent, he ran the news desk at Benzinga for what, 10 years? You were head of the news desk? Long time.
Yeah.
So Brent specializes in headlines and understanding, what moves stocks, understanding different relationships. And he's working in the background for us folks to bring you guys, headlines and news, but also, just to, help us, understand the news headlines better and stuff. So Brent, give us a little bit, about yourself. Like, how'd you get into the financial markets?
I mean, I think of myself as just keeping you guys in check a little bit, like Dennis, take it easy on Joel. Take it easy on Joel. So I was always interested in the stock market, since a little guy, and kind of had been reading and writing a ton as a youngster. My dad was an English teacher for like 50 years. So he always had me reading and writing. And I went to school for finance, and in the background, I'm kind of reading and writing. And I got out of school and I learned that you can kind of do this like financial journalism thing. And that was a game changer for me. So I started, learning how I could write in that way and learning how I could use some research skills in that way, kind of like got into the news, and it was a natural fit at Benzinga to run the news team. And that's where I met Joel. That's where I met Dennis. Got so much education from these guys. The audience already knows this, but I went to school for 4 or 5 years, learned about a ton of finance. I worked at a place called Street Insider for like 4 or 5 years, learned a ton from there. Never learned as much in school or at my first job out of school as I did from Joel and Dennis. These guys are two of the best educators and some of the better traders out there. You guys got a great advantage every single morning getting great info from them, I think.
Yeah, and I just want to throw in going back over the years, and you guys know how reactive I am to the markets and stuff, and Brent would be like on the news desk and stuff, and I'd be like, there's news, I'm telling you, there's news, and he'd be like, calm down, there's nothing. And then we would have arguments over 1 minute charts, like when to go to the 1 minute chart. And but I got to tell you that the one lasting impression that I have about Brendan, the reason that I wanted to bring him on to the team is, and I know this is going back a few years, was COVID. And Dennis, I don't know how long you guys have been following us, but Dennis and I were following it very closely, and I was like, I kept asking Brett about it, like what's going on, and I could just remember, and this is long before, this is like maybe January and everything, and I'm like, Brett, man, and he's like, this is bad. He goes, I don't know. You were following what was going on in Europe and everything, and it was like such an eye opening thing, and it's hard to believe. But the reason we're bringing him on, he's been bringing you those updates. We want your feedback up on that.
Yes, please.
So please sign up for that. And our goal is to bring you more coverage of the markets, and I don't think there's a better person to do it on Wall Street than the Brentsters. So
Well, I appreciate that, Joel.
Introduce you to Christian Fromhertz here. How
I
about
know we
adding,
never met.
How about adding a balance to Dennis and I? I mean, can you think of a better like if you're on a teeter-totter, there's Christian Fromhertz sitting in the middle, going like this.
Kind of. Christian's just a nice guy. Like, I've always liked the rude Canadian, a lot of people call me, because Canadians are stereotypical, very nice, but I'll like give my opinion and come right on here. So, we know Joel will give his opinion too. Christian's just such a good guy. He comes in the team and he's so knowledgeable. But Brent, we love having you. I mean, it's awesome to obviously to introduce you to our audience too. We've done this before, so if you've been with us for the last 10 years, Brent well. Brent, will continue to help us in the behind the scenes though. And, he's going to be watching the headlines for us too. So, Brent, I just want to thank you, for coming off, obviously, and helping us out. We're trying to get started on our own here. We're trying to build something here. And, we hope we can be a big part of it.
My pleasure, Dennis. I think we I'm so lucky to, have this opportunity with you guys. And I mean that. And it's because I see the opportunity also out there, but I'm also just excited to like spend some fun days with you guys, some fun mornings. We have a lot of fun, It's a good thing.
Yep. Because you're gonna make money, you're gonna lose money by following the markets. Okay, well, you guys, you just got introduced to a man behind the scenes. A lot of you already know Brent Slava Davidu. You can follow him on Twitter, and he's gonna be helping us out a lot more here starting in February. So, all right, Brent. Well, he's helping us out now, but got to get him on air. So, thanks a lot, Brent. We'll be talking to you soon.
All right, later, guys.
Thanks, Brad.
Okay. Final thoughts here on this. I got a name for this. Wicked Wednesday. I mean,
I like that. Look what we just did. Christian, I got to get your final thoughts here, and then I can finish up here. What are your final thoughts or thoughts going into today?
Okay, well, sorry, this is going to be a little bit. I started to think about this last night because we do have this very much of a whippy market now all of a sudden. And, we don't know if the SPY is going to break. If I'm looking at Joel's SPY chart on the upper right there, it kind of looks like a deformed head and shoulders, but it's not a head and shoulders until it breaks the neckline. So there's a lot of things at play here. And one of the things that I always come back to is earnings. Right. So instead of, I know that Joel likes to punt around his 0-day options and, for the short term. So this is going a little bit outside of that. And I'm looking at like, what could be the, Joel mentioned earlier, like, and I think both of you mentioned, like, what are the catalysts for this year? So when we look for the next 2 weeks, Netflix reports, that's like the big, one of the big like tech communications first out of the gate. That's on the 21st. So even like I'm thinking if the market does decide to dip and kind of continue lower for whatever reason, would you rather be buying or looking at some of these names up here, or would you rather, like, if we do sell off, it might be a little bit better going into that earning season, which is just around the corner, to have a little bit lower expectations. So I'm kind of thinking like trying to extract, like, if we do sell off a little bit, it actually might be a good thing. I personally don't want to see, because I do view as earnings as one of the catalysts. Like, we need to have strong earnings for the bull market to continue. So I would rather have a bit lower expectations and have some of these names come in. So if you could kind of have instead of that like immediate gratification trade that everybody looks for with short-term trading, think about over the next couple of weeks, right? We're just in the beginning of the year. If we kind of come in a little bit, it actually might be a good thing for the bulls, because I think sentiment is also just too hot right now. And I think a flush would kind of clear up some of that hot sentiment that's in the market. So think about things over the next couple of weeks. And that's kind of where I'm thinking, because I think day to day, things are going to be kind of tricky with these moves that we're seeing. Plus, we've got a jobs report on Friday. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, short term versus medium term.
Oh, it's interesting points you're making. And I mean, I never considered, we're going to have a lot of chop, but obviously earnings season is just around the corner here. I mean, this week's very light. We start, Delta on Friday, KB Homes on Thursday. Next week, we'll get into the banks. But after that, we're going to start to get into mega cap tech. So they basically are 2 weeks out here from like starting to see some serious, 2-3 weeks out from some serious earnings coming in. And I mean, there's going to be a lot of chop. We got a new administration coming in, around the same time. Holy, the recipe is for volatility, folks. The recipe is, I think that's what, I'm seeing too. I think, you come down, maybe you lower the bar a little bit, maybe get some earnings pops. Maybe if we don't come down, maybe the bar is too high and we get some earnings drops. But either way, I think we're just going to have a lot of chop and slop here, especially early in the year. And I don't know out later into the year, but maybe it continues.
Okay, all right. Fun show today, guys. Just overall market thoughts here. I mean, fade. I mean, so far that's what the market's given you. It's given you a lot of fading opportunities. You do have the Fed minutes coming out at 2 o'clock. I don't think there'll be major surprises there, but be aware of that. Also, if you have your zero TE or your weekly options, you're going to get zapped tomorrow because the markets are closed tomorrow. So I was gonna give you our guest for tomorrow as Jim Tassoni, but it's wrong because it's a national day of mourning for Jimmy Carter. So Friday, guys, day off with pay for Dennis and Christian. On Friday, we're going to be joined by Jeremy Schwartz from Wisdom Tree and get his fundamental outlook on the markets. Folks, thanks for joining us. Make sure you sign up to get the market updates and be in your mailbacks coming real soon. That's a wrap here on this Wednesday.